With a date finally set in the trial for the impeachment of Attorney General Ken Paxton, the Republican Party of Texas is calling it out as a sham. I'm Brandon Waltons. This is the headline. The special session stalemate continues in Austin as the House and the Senate still are dug in on their separate approaches to property tax relief. Here to talk about the special session happening now, the special sessions happening in the future, as well as the upcoming Ken Paxton impeachment trial in the Senate, we have Republican Party of Texas Chairman Matt Rinaldi. Matt, it's now been several weeks. I mean, we literally at this point only have a few more days left in this first special session. And it still doesn't seem to me like the House and the Senate are really anywhere closer to coming to a deal on how to allocate this property tax relief money. You've served in the legislature. You served in the House. What are your thoughts on what exactly is happening right now?
Well, what you're seeing is an impasse, and that impasse is eventually going to need to be broken by a series of compromise. Looks like the Senate has been willing to work to reach a compromise, and it seems like the House's position is they started with appraisal caps, then they were going to compression only. It seems their position is anything that the Senate won't do. That's what it seems like to me. And I mean, really, when you're talking about compression versus, homestead exemption, there's a lot of conservatives on both sides of the issue. Compression only is what we were talking about as a means to use surplus revenue to buy down property taxes until the M&O rate, which is like, half of your taxes almost, reaches zero. Theoretically, if you're going to eliminate property taxes for everybody, that would be one way to do it. But that's not what we did this year. We took $35 billion. We handed out a bunch of it to businesses, so they already got their tax cut. And now homeowners are kind of left out. So now that there's a small pool of $12 billion left, the House wants to come in and say, oh, we got to split that evenly among businesses and homeowners. Well, you just gave businesses a preferential handout with a bunch of corporate welfare. How about looking out for the homeowners now? And, I've had a discussion with many of the proponents of compression over, on our side of compression over homestead exemption. They're always like, well, you're picking winners and losers. It was like, yeah, that's the point. You're picking homeowners as the winner in the homestead exemption. Like, ideally, if you were going to eliminate taxes and do it as cheaply as possible, homeowners should be first in line. Ideally, you would do it with a percentage homestead exemption rather than an aggregate amount so that it doesn't get eviscerated by inflation and increases in the appraisals. But, what the Senate's trying to do is prioritize homeowners over businesses.
Yeah, and certainly, I mean, you said it yourself. There's certainly advocates on both sides. We've heard from both. I think really the bigger question everybody gets down to is why are we only talking about $12 billion in new property tax relief when we had such a big surplus? But eventually,
that's why the Freedom Caucus plan was pretty good. It was like, okay, let's do the Senate plan and then grab an extra $4 billion and put it into compression.
Yeah, sign me up for that. Eventually, though, we will presumably get through this. And yet the governor has said that he has many more items to add to special session calls. What are some things that the party is hoping gets added to those calls as we continue through the summer and even, looking like into the fall with these continued special sessions? Well,
school choice being number one. I mean, that was the biggest failure of session and the most high profile failure of the regular session. We were happy to see that the governor started vetoing bills over the school choice issue rather than just, like a policy, high-minded policy debate over compression versus homestead exemption. But there were other issues as well. I mean, you see like ESG becoming such a problem in states like Florida dealing with using their institutional power to pressure the BlackRocks, the ISSs of the world and the Vanguards of the world into eliminating ESG as a factor in their corporate governance structures. And, we didn't do that here. It died in the House. There were a lot of other bills as well that died in the House, and one of which originated in the House, which was Matt Schaefer's border plan. I mean, we didn't do anything significant for the border this past regular session, so we'd like to see something done on that as well.
Moving on, we have also on the calendar now, we have a date for a potential trial for the impeachment of Ken Paxton, Attorney General, in the Senate, that being set for potentially September 5th. Now, the Republican Party of Texas recently passed a resolution condemning the impeachment of Attorney General Ken Paxton by the House last month. What exactly is motivating right now the opposition to this, what some are calling an illegal impeachment and others are calling a complete sham?
Well, that the impeachment was a sick political joke and didn't follow any modicum of procedure that I think any impeachment has ever followed in the past. The House gave notice that they were going to impeach the Attorney General, right, about 48 hours before they voted on it. And prior to that 48-hour period, not a single Republican, not a single one, was talking publicly about impeaching the Attorney General. It was absolutely ridiculous. And then as soon as 48 hours before the vote passed, as soon as that time passed, and Dade Phelan said he wanted to impeach the Attorney General, suddenly everybody wanted to impeach the Attorney General. It's absolutely ridiculous. It was clearly acting in lockstep with the Speaker. And the reason why the Speaker was doing it, was obvious as well. He has Democrats in his leadership team. This is something the Republican Party was sounding the alarm on at the beginning of session. When you bring Democrats into your leadership team, you will have to give up something. And it seems like this session, Dade Phelan offered them the head of the Attorney General, which was something that, top Democrats have been talking about since, if you do a Google search on it, you could see when they started talking about impeaching the Attorney General, January 7th, 2021. And it wasn't because of any business dealings. It wasn't because of his pending legal case. It was because he filed lawsuits challenging the 2020 election results, and they wanted to hold him responsible for the January 6th riots at the Capitol. So this all goes back to that. And if it didn't, then there would have been some Republicans talking about this as well, and they weren't.
Last question before we go. Will Hurd announced his campaign for the presidency. Now we've got a Texan candidate in the race. Is this good news for Texas? Do we have some Hurd momentum on the horizon?
I am so freaking excited right now about the Will Hurd presidential candidacy. I thought Larry Hogan would just be like the pinnacle of our presidential race, but now Will Hurd, just absolutely unbelievable. Everybody just should be thrilled. And if you can't catch my sarcasm, come on.
Yeah, and I think I can collectively hear people asking, who? Who? Larry
Hogan? He's going to break, 0.5% of the vote maybe in Texas.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Matt.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Stick around. We'll be right back.
If you're not watching the Luke Macias show, then you are not as engaged as everybody else is in Texas who's trying to make a difference, knowing exactly what's going on so that they can take action on the things that really matter. Guys, watch us on the Roku app for Texas Scorecard. Watch us on YouTube. Listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Get engaged, get more informed, so together we can actually make a bigger difference on things that matter for the future of Texas. God bless you.
Well, within the past couple weeks, we got an announcement from Randal Steinhauser that she's going to be running for the RNC Committeewoman position that's currently been held now for quite some time by Tony Ann DeShiel here in Texas. We invited Tony Ann DeShiel to join us on the program. We'll let you know if she responds. But right now we have Randal Steinhauser. Randal, thank you so much for joining. And for folks who maybe have not seen you before, not heard of you before, give folks a little bit of an idea of your background and why you're running for this position.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me on. And I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about why I am excited to be the next RNC Committeewoman for Texas. I was approached about this opportunity several months ago and have given it a lot of thought and prayer and consideration. And I'm excited now to tell you that the enthusiasm for my campaign continues to grow. So I've been home in Texas now for 12 years. I'm a mother of four, a homeschooling mother of four, and a small business owner. I've been involved in conservative politics and public policy for since I was a college student, actually. And I've been really passionate about fighting for educational freedom, healthcare freedom, limited government, personal responsibility, fiscal responsibility, and just feel like we have a real obligation to have a very strong Christian conservative convicted voice on the RNC to represent Texas, to stand up for our values, and to be unafraid to hold Republicans accountable when they stand in the way of conservative public policy, and be unafraid to call out the radical progressive left when they are indoctrinating our children and taking over every institution that has made America great.
And what are you seeing right now are the biggest obstacles inside the RNC? I mean, we talk a lot about Texas politics and what happens in the Republican Party of Texas. I think some folks might be not as familiar with what happens at a national level. What are the biggest obstacles right now that you're seeing?
You know, one of the things I'm telling people is that Texas has an opportunity to elect one man and one woman to send to the RNC. And it is our job as conservative grassroots activists to show up to convention to say, when we send a representative from Texas to the RNC, we expect that they will be an advocate for the grassroots, that they will respond to the needs of those who are most active in the Republican Party. And that includes everything from candidate recruitment, supporting down ballot candidates from the most, highly sought offices of U.S. Senate and U.S. Congress, but also school board, county commissioners. We have got to improve our data infrastructure, and that starts at the top and goes all the way to the bottom to make sure that we have strong voter infrastructure to know who our voters are so that we can communicate with them. It also goes back to election integrity, making sure that our elections are secure and safe and reliable. So I think there are a number of issues that we can be strong voices for at the national level to represent the will and the desire of the grassroots Republicans, who are really the tip of the spear when it comes to keeping Texas, Texas.
The last time the RNC was in the news, there was a big fight over the leadership. Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel was reelected, but had some challengers from the right. What are your thoughts on Chairwoman McDaniel?
I think anytime you have multiple people running for an office is a great opportunity for folks to be very open and honest and transparent about where they stand. I am always in support of folks challenging someone who's been in office for too long, which is part of the reason I've stepped up myself to serve on the RNC. I think that when we have a unanimous resolution coming out of the SREC, which I have served on, I served on the SREC a few years ago, and I can tell you, it's very rare for the SREC to agree on anything unanimously. But not only did the SREC unanimously vote to support Harmeet Dillon, there was also thousands of grassroots activists who contacted our RNC committeeman and committeewoman and wanted their voice to be heard as well. So I think that we, in terms of our leadership on the RNC, had a real opportunity to show the grassroots we are listening, we respect your voice, and we want to be a representative of the party. And the party is really only as strong as our grassroots activists. And I think this was a missed opportunity to show our grassroots that we support them. And if given the opportunity for that vote, I would have supported Harmeet Dillon.
And let me ask you, because you've been involved in all sorts of policy, but one of those policies that you've been closely tied to has been school choice. We just got done speaking with Chairman Matt Rinaldi about school choice being on a future special session call. What do you think right now is the biggest obstacles to getting this passed in a Republican-controlled legislature in Texas?
It's the same problem we see with other conservative public policies from getting passed, whether it's robust border security or out of control spending, as we've seen the largest budget increase in Texas history. So I would say that we have a lot of folks in the Texas House who simply put an R beside their name because they know that that is what it's going to take to get elected. For them, that R does not stand for a lot. And for us conservatives, we know that the party is a vehicle for the ideas, the conservative limited government principles that we hold true. And so we do have a lot of members in the Texas House who continue to stand in the way of our conservative public policy priorities from getting passed. Educational freedom absolutely being one of them. As you mentioned, I've been advocating as both a grassroots activist and a mother for several years, going on over a decade now here in Texas. And it's been a little bit too little too late. And I think it's far beyond time that Texas catches up with the rest of the nation in empowering parents with educational freedom instead of being beholden to a government indoctrination system.
So the vote for RNC Committeewoman will take place with delegates to the Republican Party of Texas next summer. What can folks do who want to follow your campaign or get involved?
Well, I would love your support. So visit randonforrnc.com. You can find me on social media at Randon Marie on Twitter. Get in touch with me. I would love to plug you into my campaign. I'm going to be traveling across the state, speaking to many grassroots groups. I'd love to come to your area. I'll usually have a kid or two in tow, so be prepared for that. We travel as a pack, and I'd love to earn your support, earn your trust, and most importantly, to be a voice for the Christian conservative grassroots leaders of our state. So randonforrnc.com.
Randon, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of The Headline. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead, hit like, hit subscribe, hit that bell so you can be notified every time we have new content for you here at Texas Scorecard. For right now, I'm Brandon Waltons. Have a great weekend.
No ads, no paywalls, no government grants, and no corporate masters. Just real news for real Texans. This is Texas Scorecard.